Hi, it's Eva. Um, I have a lot to say. I meant to do it last night, but I don't know. I fell asleep, honestly. and so I'm gonna go through it today. I have decided to come outside because it's so pretty out, and it's before it's gonna get like wretchedly hot. So anyway, um, I've been just really struggling, I'd say, with okay, here's the thing. Like, all my life, especially in my adult life, well, I'd say probably, I don't know, into high school and up, I would get to these sort of pinnacle points where, I would be a good enough student, or I would be a good enough writer or employee or a community service person or mother or whatever. I would get to these points where I thought, this is it. I'm gonna get out of this quagmire that is dragging me down, which is my past, which is where I come from. And the things that happened to me. And honestly, I'm right at that point again. Like this, I've been at this point multiple times in my life. And this is what usually happens. I'm trying not to cry. I'll get to this point and it's like I'm almost there. Like I'm this close to, and like this has happened even in my personal life with, like, when my long-term marriage was in jeopardy for years over addiction, and I kept staying because I was raised, like, my grandparents were married like 55 years and they had a good marriage, and I didn't want to be, I know this is so cliche, but I didn't want to be a failure in something that I truly believed in. Like, I truly believe in marriage. Like, if there was anybody who would be marriage material, it's freaking me, because I'm so old-fashioned, and I love, and I love, but not like just like romantic comedy love. Like, I'm just a very, like, person who has their feelings on their sleeve, or whatever they call that when they say that about people, whether they wear their feelings on their sleeve. I'm just a very I'm a loving person. That's just how God made me. And I didn't want to hurt my children. And I had, because of addiction, I had thought maybe I wouldn't ever talk about this because I didn't want to hurt any of the parties involved. But I realized that if I'm going to talk about this issue that's basically eating me up every day, I'm going to have to go into some of that, because otherwise none of this is going to make sense. Okay, in a nutshell, like, the way I could explain it without, like, talking about other people very much is, You know how like yesterday I talked about the Mobile, and I said like in every family that's dysfunctional, whether it's mental illness or it's addiction, there's like people play different roles. Well, like if you watch my video on 1984, the book, that's what I talked about. Like that I went to this addiction class. Well, it wasn't just about addiction. It was about like, family systems. And the day that they were doing addiction, they had like this baby mobile, and then on like each different string that would come down and have like a different toy for the baby. And they had all the different family roles. Like there would be the family scapegoat, and then there would be the codependent, and then there would be the addict. Then there would be like the first child. The oldest child is usually the one who tries to like the oldest child usually takes the role of like being the mom or dad, like holding it all together and like helping the siblings like get their needs met and stuff, because obviously the parents are busy being, in their own roles in addiction, which is, if anybody's been through that, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And even if you haven't, and you have a close friend or family member who has been through this, I mean, it's really textbook. It really follows this distinct pattern that like I wish I would have never even known about. One of my big regrets as being a mother is being in this history of having played this role. Which, like, I remember how I told you yesterday, like, all my feelings about my mom, and I was like, well, I always thought, like, my biggest problem was her physical presence, because I was afraid of her, and because of her severe mental illness, and because of the abuse I'd had as a child, because of my grandparents basically like not protecting me. In their offense, I feel like my grandmother was such an amazing mother. She was so thoughtful and caring, and like she would just, I always like would call her like Debbie Reynolds, because she would be like so entertaining and vivacious. And it's like, there's this great movie with Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds was her mother, and it's like Carrie Fisher, who was Princess Leia, she wrote a whole book series that was kind of autobiographical, but they were like fiction. But it was basically her relationship with her mom, because they were kind of best friends. But the difference was Carrie was very sarcastic, and I wouldn't say she was reserved, but her fame or her being a star was based more around her like candid, highly intelligent humor and her beauty. And Debbie Reynolds was basically like a song and dance person, like her mother. I mean, she was almost like one of those Broadway stars who's always kicking their legs up in the air, and what do they call it? I don't remember what they call them, but anyway, Radio Hall City. She was like one of those where she was just the life of the party, and like if there was a dinner party, like Debbie Reynolds would like come out in like an amazing cocktail dress with full makeup, even if it was like she had just cooked a big meal or something, and she was a Hollywood person, she probably had a caterer, but she, you know what I mean, like she would, somebody would be playing at the piano and Debbie Reynolds would just like put on a show, and her daughter Carrie Fisher would probably be sitting in the audience, kind of rolling her eyes and smoking a cigarette. Like that's just how they were. And My grandmother was, like I said, like Debbie Reynolds. And I was very much like Carrie Fisher. Like, I was kind of like the realistic critic. And I was, this is what is real. I can't believe I'm being this honest. Okay, this is what is really, this has been my saving grace in my entire life, and it's also been my biggest Achilles heel. I've always been, like, for whatever reason, the voice of truth. Like, I was always the one who was like, hey, wait a minute, like, this doesn't seem normal. Like, hi, like, I don't think we should be, like, this is not, we need to, like, do you see what I'm seeing, And everybody would be like, no, like, what, like, like, what do you, don't say that. Like, that's basically, and it was my role, like, it was my role growing up in my family, after my grandparents adopted me. Probably was my role with my parents when we were all alone. And I have this memory, like, I'm so serious. Like, I remember this, I think I was like three and a half or 4. And I remember, like, I was sitting in the window in, like, the kitchen, like, this is true. And this is Florida, and my parents were so, like, for real, okay, like, my dad was bipolar with hallucinations, and my mom, like I've said before, was undiagnosed, no, she was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, but she wouldn't take any medication or get any therapy. Okay, so I have this distinct memory of being super hungry and sitting by this window and watching both my parents try to use a can opener to open this can, like, and I am so serious, like, nobody could figure it out. Like, that's real. And yeah, so there was just a lot of, like, average normal things that you would never think about that did not take place in my early childhood. Like, nobody knew how to do them. The things my dad did and mom did know is mule. My mom knew how to just be yourself and just really, like, not give a shit about anybody else. And my dad was just the best playmate. I mean, like, he was way better than even kids. Like, he could tell stories. Like, he would make up all these stories. He would, like, play games with we used to sit out on the cause my parents got in a car wreck, and I think the sun was in my dad's eyes or something, and so we didn't have a car for a while, and we used to take the bus everywhere. And I remember sitting out on the bus bench waiting for the bus in Florida, and I remember my dad and I counting cars, and, like, I mean, that's just how he was. He was like, he was a really awesome caregiver, and he ended up being a nurse at Yale Hospital, and for like 12 years even. And at that point, he was on medication and he was getting all kinds of therapy, but I wasn't living with him at that point. So anyway, what's my point? Okay, my point is that pretty much everybody, including me in my life, has played these kind of distinct roles to a T. And when I was in my marriage, like, when I got married, I knew that he had an addiction, because I had come out of that period of my life where I was experimenting with drugs in my early 20s, and I was I mean, experimenting is not quite the right word. I basically, like, just, I don't know. I left the bubble of school, like, this wonderful college where I totally belonged, and I got amazing grades, and, like, yes, I was raped the first year, and I had to take a leave of absence, but I came back, and I was able to even graduate on time, even though I had to make up that 6 months I took off. So, like, while everybody was having, like, senior, what do you call it? The senior year where you have to get everything done right before you graduate. Like, I had to do like extra. I had to do like a whole extra semester of stuff because I had to make up for that absence if I wanted to graduate with my class. So, and as usual, the point I'm trying to make is I pulled it off. This is the point I'm trying to make. Every time in my life, especially as an adult, that I've had to like make it to the finish line, even though like, you know, my horse is lame, or, you know, someone just shot my car and like one of the tires is out. Like, I literally will make it. Like, I will at the last second, you know, despite whatever shit I'm going through. And usually there's some like huge, massive problem that I'm dealing with that people may or may not know about. And it's like, I stagger across whatever the goal line is, and I just barely make it. But as many times as that has happened, and those are the things that have made me feel good about my life and make me have a good resume and blah, blah, blah. As many times as that has happened, I would say there are 75% as many times that I have literally done that last stretch, that, you know, where it's like, okay, you find out who's got it and who doesn't, right? And I fall short. Like, I don't make it. And I get 3/4 of the way to winning or overcoming like and it's always the obstacle that's going to push me into the next level every time. It's like the thing that's going to save my marriage, or the thing that's going to make up for like what one of my kids had to go through that they shouldn't have had to go through. Or it's like some like community goal that I have worked my ass off on my own time, that like literally nobody else would ever have spent all their time doing. Like, nobody. And somehow I've managed to pull that shit off, you know, and it's actually successful. And then like I'm just about to get like funding, I'm just about to get like, and then like it all just crumbles for like whatever reason. Usually it's some like third factor, you know, something else that's going on that's got like literally, it's always something that like literally I wasn't in charge of. Like, there's nothing I could have done to, well, honestly, that's not true. If I had known ahead of time, I could have like gone in and worked extra harder or done something to fix it. But that's why I'm kind of obsessed with, well, this is always another trait that's always my downfall. I'm always obsessed with knowing things ahead of time. Like, I want to know, like, I'm usually always like, okay, so just wondering, like, you know, like before a project even starts, I'll just be like, so just, you know, out of curiosity, you know, what could like just like, what could be like the downfall? You're like, what is the thing that's like the dark horse, you know? So I can like sort of figure it out ahead of time, and then like a good trauma victim like go in and micromanage and super hyper control that area and get it straightened out so that I don't get caught by something I didn't see coming. And that, because usually if you have been in any kind of, especially as a crime victim, if you have ever been in a situation where something out of the blue happened to you and it like ruined your life or almost ruined your life, like you get this sort of like innate, like if you survive it, you get this sort of innate behavior trait where you become a control freak. And like, I already was a control freak or perfectionist or whatever, but the thing about me is I'm real quirky. I'm real kind of like out of the box. Like, I don't do things like the way most people do them. Like, I'm not trying to be like toot my own horn or anything. I'm trying to sell you. A lot of times it's like people are like, why are you doing it that way? It's not like always a good thing. Like, a lot of times people are like, what the fuck? But it's like it works. Like, it's just like, I mean, I'm like a super firm believer in like creativity works. Like, thinking out of the box works. Like, doing things from your instinct fucking works. And you just have to be tuned in. Okay, where was I going with this? Okay. So here's the thing about life. When you start, especially in like relationships, whether it's like anything, like a friendship, romantic relationship, like parent-child, like anything, parent-child, like I think this happened a lot with my, the people who raised me. If you obsessively, obsessively, that's the wrong word. If you always pick at things and try to make sure that they're going to be okay, and like people aren't going to leave when things start to get real, or if you do that because you've had a lifetime of disappointment, like, not to be like super dramatic sad, but if you do that, you will ruin it. You will actually destroy the thing, because I've come to accept that the only certainty in life is uncertainty. Am I saying that right? Uncertainty. It doesn't sound right. So part of the amazing thing about life, and part of the shitty, scary part of life, is that we don't 100% know what's going to happen. And that's incredible, because you could be like, oh, here I am living in my hometown that I actually never wanted to ever leave, and I like left here at 17 like a badass, because I was able to like secure this school that was like, everybody was like, that's unattainable, but I did it. And then I had to come back here, because of addiction, in my life and other people's life. And well, I also wanted to take care of my uncle, because I took care of, was a caretaker for him for like 20 years, because he was like my father, because he lived in our house when I was growing up on the weekends. So he did all that stuff. Like, he did homework with me. Like, we would ride bicycles together to this magazine shop. I'm sure like many of you are like, what's a magazine shop? And guess that doesn't exist anymore, but it's basically like a bookstore, only it's all like comic books and magazines. And we would always go get donuts on our bikes, and I think I had a banana seat or whatever. But like, he played Monopoly with me when I was little, and I didn't have my dad anymore, or I could only see my dad like once a year when I went in the summers to Connecticut. Like, my Uncle Ronnie would like play trains with me. Like, he did all the dad stuff, right? Where am I going with this? Well, he was probably the only person who could put up with my fear of uncertainty. He was the only person who could deal with it. Like, literally, it's driven everybody else crazy. But it's like, I'll just be like, when things are going really well, I'll just be like, I'll be Carrie Fisher. I'll be like, I'm just wondering, like, when's something really shitty gonna happen? Like, do you feel any, like, do you see anything like red flags? Do you see anything like that could possibly like go wrong? Am I doing something that, like, I should really like work on, And my uncle would just sort of laugh it off, like, I'd be like, well, I really want to get this job, or I really want to do this thing, or I want to win this writing contest, or get this poem published or whatever, and I'd be like, yeah, I've got like, you know, like a small chance in hell shot, and I'd be like, what do you think I should, you know, like what would you foresee might be like something that would, you know, what do you think, like be honest, like what could I possibly miss? And like he would just laugh it off, you know, but other people not so much. Other people are like, why don't you just relax and let things be? I'll be like, well, you know, you never know what's gonna happen, you know, you could be going to the park to have lunch, and then, you know, so you know you can't read well for the rest of your life. You know, like anything can happen, right? So I just like to be prepared, right? Okay. So yeah, I guess it's a type A type personality, which doesn't make any sense because I'm a very much like loosey-goosey type of person, and I'll just sort of that's another way like I can be kind of different, is I'll just sort of be like, what are your plans for this week? And it's like, well, I don't know, you know, like we'll see what happens, you know, like I'm just like, I don't really like plans, you know. I just like, it's like, well, how can you be so hyper focused on things going wrong and like question people to death, but at the same time, like when they ask you what you're doing, you're just like, oh, you know, maybe I'll go swimming, maybe go for a walk, I don't know. Walk where? I don't know. Whatever happens, happens, you know. So I don't really like being put in schedules, but I understand that the world is scheduled. I don't really understand what that's all about. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. Okay, so many of the times in my life, there have been these situations, and like I almost feel like right now I'm in that kind of situation again in my life, where it's like kind of have some opportunities, but it's like all eyes on me. Like, am I going to just do the things that need to be done, or am I gonna fuck it up? And I think I'm gonna do what needs to be done, but I think I'm gonna do it probably with an insane amount of fear, and well, there might be like some minor self-sabotage because I'm always afraid that something's gonna go wrong, and like I'll hope for something and get like extraordinarily disappointed. So like I'm kind of like, I'm in, but I'm like assuming I'll be in until something happens. But the truth is, in life, if you just follow the rules and do what you're supposed to do, and here's the big thing, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that things are going to go right. And I think I do believe in myself. I think 100% I believe in myself, because I feel like I can look at my life and be like, look at all this shit that happened to me, and I am still standing. But in my mind, I know the only reason I'm still standing is because of God. If I didn't have a relationship with God, if I didn't have faith, because I literally had nobody else, not that I only went to God because I had no one else, I don't want to sound like that. I just always was born, I was born with like an insane closeness with, I don't know what you want to call it, higher power, with like spirit, with like belief in the universe, belief in like the glow of life, like life force. Like I feel like I radiate that. I feel like I embody that. I feel like that makes me happy all the time. Like even in some of the worst times of my life, I've been like, people have been like, oh, well, did you ever feel like you couldn't go on? And I'd be like, not really. Like I would just be like, you know, I would miss life. Like I love it. Like I just like everything about being alive. I love, you know, even though I've made 100 mistakes, and you know, I'm sure I've done things that are like I know I've done things that I like will regret for the rest of my life, but I've never been somebody who was like, well, you know, if I woke up in a hospital room and like I was like, you know, had something that like, you know, I was in a body cast or something crazy, you know, like I would still look out the window and be like, oh my God, look at how like the light glints off that skyscraper. It's so pretty. Like that's just how I am. And you know, or somebody could bring me like jam and toast or something with my horrible hospital food, and I'd be like, oh my God, I love raspberry jam. This is so cool. You know, like I'm just wired that way. I'm wired in a way that I appreciate the little things, and maybe that is a trauma response. But I've been traumatized since I was like probably 2 years old or younger. So it's like, it's all I know. It's all I know. So, but I've also been like extraordinarily lucky. It's like a really weird life. It's like, as much as I've had like some of the most craziest, awful things happen to me, I've also had like crazy luck, you know, like the big things have worked out, even though they shouldn't have, really, considering the circumstances. Like when I was getting my master's degrees, like the first time, my ex-husband worked third shift all the time, and it was like, I had like a 4-year-old, and, or I don't know, she was 3, and I was going to school full time, and the program was super hard, and like you wouldn't think it would be. It was just library school, for God's sake. But everybody there, like, they were like really into technology, and because that was the future of libraries. And like I super am not really into technology, though obviously I'm using it right now. But I just feel like I didn't fit in really with that whole scene, and like it was lonely. Like it was lonely, you know, because I would a lot of times have to bring my kid, like if we had to go on like some silly field trip to like go visit some other library or whatever out of town. I would always have like a kid asleep, you know, in a car seat I'd have to bring in, or what, you know. I just always had these weird situations, and like I felt like I don't know if it was just like the program wasn't like nobody had children yet, and I don't think I really had kids that young. I was only 25. Well, I was 25. I think 25 is kind of old, but anyway, that was highly challenging, but I did it, and I was able to do it and then make a lot more money than I ever made at Barnes & Noble. That's for damn sure. And then the second time I went to get my social work degree, I ended up having to go 3 years because a lot of the credits at Sarah Lawrence, because this is such a kind of like a weird artsy alternative liberal arts place, like the university here was really by the book, and they were not alternative in any way, and they were very conservative, and they wouldn't take a lot of my undergraduate credits, so I had to retake a whole year of undergraduate and then do 2 years of the master's program. And that whole time was pretty much the end of my marriage, and it was like I had one kid. I mean, I don't want to get into the details, but I had one kid that wanted me desperately to get divorced to the point where they moved out, and while they were still in high school, because like kind of in rebellion against the fact that I was codependent and staying. The other kid wanted me to keep our family together at any cost, and would, you know, come home with his little backpack on, and if I said, oh, I think we're gonna have to get divorced, he would like face down on the floor with his backpack still on, just sobbing uncontrollably. So I'd be like, okay, great, like either way I lose, okay, either way. Either decision I make, if I make a decision to take a stand against my own codependency and like do the right thing, I will hurt somebody irreparably. If I do the opposite and just stay, because I've been basically living by myself for the last, decades, because I had to do everything alone. Because basically when you're with somebody who has an addiction, like, if you're not doing the addiction, you're by yourself. Okay, that's what's happening, because you're not participating in their favorite thing, so you're not their favorite person. So you may look on paper like you have an incredible relationship, but you are by yourself, and you are doing everything, all the stuff. You're two people by yourself, and nobody knows, and you can't tell anybody. Because if you tell people, they'd be like, well, why don't you do something about that? Why don't you stand up for yourself? And you'd be like, well, then I crush someone's heart like a child. And then I wonder if my child is going to be spending every other weekend with someone who's doing methamphetamines. And I get to worry and wonder, will I get my child back on Monday or Sunday night or whatever? Or have I let them be destroyed by my own poor choice making? So those are the thoughts I have. Well, you can't say that to normal people. No. You have to be like fake, like everybody else in the world, and be like, oh, I just haven't really made up my mind yet, just considering all the options, which I never have a lot of options. I usually have 2 options, and they both totally blow. Like, I remember when my uncle was dying, but he was 91, so it wasn't like shocking, and he knew he was going to. He couldn't do anything that he liked to do for probably the last 8 years of his life or 10 years of his life. He couldn't go for a walk. He couldn't do anything that he liked. But the doctor basically came in and said, he's going to die. And, or you're like, maybe he could get a feeding tube, but he's probably going to die with a feeding tube anyway. So do you want to put him through that or not? Because he didn't have children, so I was really his child. And so I remember going up to him and I said, remember when we used to watch that show when I was a kid, and there'd be like, I don't know, I think it was The Price is Right. And I said, there'd be like, you can have what's behind curtain number 1 or curtain number 2 or curtain number 3. Remember when we used to watch that? We used to have so much fun and laugh and stuff. He's like, oh yeah, we did do that. And I said, yeah, well, that's what's going on. I said, it looks like we have 2 curtains. That's what's going on. And actually, behind both of them is the end. They're both the end. They're both bad. They both are what you and I both don't want. So if you had a choice to do what both of us can't stand the most, which way do you want to do it? And he was like, well, where's the third one? I was like, yeah, well, looks like there's no third one today. Looks like there's only 2. And of course he died. He chose the not feeding tube. But I'm not laughing because he died. I'm laughing because that is the joke of life. Even though I super, super love life, there are so many things in life that I'm like, why? It's ever since he died, I don't have anybody to really confide in anymore. That's over, And because that was the person that I told everything to. And I understand that he was 91, I get it. But at the same time, my parents are dead. My whole immediate family's been dead. My grandmother's been dead since like in 1995. So like, that's a problem when you're raised by older people. You have to accept the fact that you're not gonna, like, they're not gonna be at like all the big important events of you and your children's lives. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Anyway, I feel like this video is getting too long, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up with a story about going out to dinner. Well, actually, it was lunch. Okay, and it has to do with what I'm talking about. In Florida, one of the things I super resented is we spent every Christmas in Florida. And when I was growing up, that usually meant, like, we would do our own Christmas ahead of time, thank God, and those were like amazing, wonderful memories. But we would always go visit my mom on real Christmas. And we would usually always take her out to a buffet. But it was at like this place called Don Cesar in St. Pete. It was like this super, super elegant, I don't know, hotel. Probably the rooms, like, back then were like $500 a night or something. I mean, like, back then was a fortune. It was like unbelievably like super fancy pants. We would go there and they would have like an ice sculpture swan, and they would have all this, you know, it was just, you know, somebody would be playing the piano and singing it, but they were actually amazing, you know. They weren't like, you know, when you go somewhere and someone's singing and you're like, oh my God, like, this is not gonna work. So, which was kind of like what happened at my wedding. But anyway, so we would do this, and it would be basically the shittiest day of the year every year for me. It was like the worst experience I would ever have, and I would always be like, oh, Christmas is coming, how awesome. And everybody would be like, what did you do for Christmas? I'd be like, oh, you wouldn't believe it, you know, we went to this incredible place. And the whole time my mother would be not wearing a bra or underwear, and she would have like some kind of like transparent type summer dress, because it was Florida, and then some kind of strange headband. I don't really know what that was about. And she would be blowing her nose in all the cloth napkins and talking to herself extremely loudly, and being really rude to us, like, really rude. And that would be another Merry Christmas for everybody. And my grandmother and her sister, like, I feel like such an asshole telling these stories. Like, if they weren't passed away, I don't think I would be saying them. However, how can I tell you the truth about addiction and mental illness if I don't tell you the bad parts? That would make a really fake video, and what would be the point in watching it? So, back to the table. So, this is what's happening. And as you can imagine, the people around us are not happy. They are like, what the fuck? And me being a teenager, you know, of course I was super nice about it. No, I was an asshole. And I remember whenever I felt like complete and utter shit, my grandmother would always be like, open her wallet and be like, well, why don't you go to the gift store? And, you know, because they had it specially open just with like Christmas crap for those few hours. And I'd be like, okay, because she would always buy me off. That was always like the thing. Like, my father-in-law did it too. He would be like, oh, looks like it's New Year's Eve and your husband's missing at a motel snorting coke again. Well, why don't you and the baby go do something nice for yourself? And he'd open his wallet and give me some money. And it's like, I would always just be like, you know, like, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Is there something that I am doing? Am I making choices that are bringing me to these situations, because if I am, I need to make better choices. Yeah, better choices. So now I feel like in my life I am making better choices. However, I'm so used to making a lot of blunders in my personal life because it's been rocky, that I don't really trust like that life can be good, like on a personal level. And that's sad, but that's true. Like, I'm kind of just like, I'll do the best I can, and I will not have high expectations because I don't want to be disappointed. That has been what I've been living on, especially the last 6 years after the brain injury. I've been like, I would keep your expectations low. Keep them low. And then everything you do will be like an amazing epiphany. Like, don't set the bar too high, Like, don't do it. Don't compare yourself to other people, for God's sake. Please. You will be disappointed. So anyway, back to the gift shop. So, and then when my mom does take a break, she goes out on there's a patio overlooking the ocean, and she's just chain smoking these female cigars, and then my grandma's like, can you go get your mother? It's always what would happen. I'd be like, I could, but I'm going to the gift store, so I'll get her on my way back to the table, and she would be out there making some kind of scene, but it wasn't bad enough yet that I needed to go get her. And my family would just be pretending everything was normal. This is so normal and healthy, and this is how people act in public, right? My grandmother was the most put together. You could never find someone better dressed, better makeup, better attitude, better anything. She was the most incredible personality of anybody I've ever met, the most hardworking person of anyone I ever met, the most vivacious of anybody I've ever met, best conversationalist, the smartest lady, the most charming, more than anything, most beautiful. However, in this situation, which was a lot of my life, she would have these blinders on that were insane. She was just okay, I can choose between doing what's best for my daughter or my granddaughter. Oh, I'm gonna choose my daughter because my daughter's sicker. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And so she was very much in the situation that I was with the addiction with my ex-husband, where she was like, well, I have two choices and they both totally blow. Which one am I gonna choose? Well, most people choose, if you have a husband who's very ill, and then you have a child who's pretty high functioning, and the husband has let's say he has cancer, so something that's terminal or something. You're gonna spend all your time with him because he has a limited time and he needs the most care, and you're gonna just assume, well, that kid is, they know what they're doing their homework, they know how to make their own food, whatever. Because people have a tendency, especially women, to focus on whoever's sickest in the household, and I've learned this. And sometimes the sickest person is the one who's the most selfish, not the guy with cancer, but in general, I've noticed this. And what ends up happening is you ignore the other person because you're focused on the emergency, you're focused on the crisis. Well, that's not really very fair to the other person. You're not really thinking about them because you think they're going to be fine. And I have probably the hardest thing I've had to do in therapy lately is I still haven't figured out how to forgive my mom because I want it to be authentic, but I'm working on it in prayer and stuff. I've got to figure out how to do it. My problem with that is, how do you forgive somebody you didn't know? I know that doesn't sound right, but it's my ex-husband, I knew him, I knew everything about him. I feel like I knew who he was in addiction and out of addiction. I know his core being, right? because I knew him so many years. Kind of grew up together. And like, he's done amazing things with his life. He got remarried, and he's doing amazing. But the point is that if I were, when I have forgiven him for some of the stuff that happened, like, I could visualize who he really is at his core. It's easier to forgive somebody that way. If you have absolutely no idea who are you forgiving? Some people are so far gone in their addiction, so far gone in their mental illness, like, there is no core person. I'm sorry. They don't exist. And when I was addicted, I think in some crazy way, I did that on some level because I wanted to know what it was like to be completely out of it. Like, I was so far gone that you don't care what other people think. You don't care. You don't have a care in the world. Like, you finally could turn off that thing that I live with every day, which is like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Am I going to make it? Is this going to, what could I do to make it better? What could I do? That's like my life. I fall asleep that way. I wake up that way. This constant anxiety of like trying to fix my life all the time. And it's like, when I had that addiction, even though that was like, oh, I only have one earring on. This is so embarrassing. It was like, I don't know how to forgive somebody I didn't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm forgiving a shell. I'm forgiving, I don't know. Like, everybody in my family knew her before she got sick. She went off to college at 19 to Bryn Mawr. That first year at college, she was just doing crazy stuff, like throwing like cans at people's heads and like throwing her clothes out the window. I mean, she was just completely mentally ill. And so she went to White Plains to a mental institute, and she was diagnosed, and she had to live there. Actually, Andy Warhol's muse, Edie, I can't remember her last name, Edie, they were on the same floor together, which if I had been there, I would have totally gotten Edie's autograph. But the point is that she had been ill. She didn't have me until she was 30, so it was like 11 years. So, but everybody else in my family knew her intimately when she was normal. They knew her, like, they spent time with her, they did things with her. She was really into Egyptology. That's why I got the Isis tattoo on my back, to honor her, honor whoever I never met. And from everything I've heard, she was gorgeous, probably the most intelligent person anybody had met, and just, a good person who, because of her polio, was very reserved and she was very introverted because of her polio and her damaged arm and everything, and her back brace and stuff that she had to wear all through high school. So, but I didn't know that person. Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, so the moral of this whole video is, when I'm in the gift store and I have the money, people always say, oh, if only I could get rich, if only I could win the lottery, if only I could get the job that has a huge salary, everything would be perfect. My whole life would change, I would be happy. Let me just tell you something. And I know no one's going to believe me. Nobody. Okay, you ready? Money doesn't take away all the pain. Nope. That's the secret. Does it make it better? Does it make your life better so you can deal with the pain with more comfort? Things to make you feel really good while you're in pain? Yes, it does. And people will think you're successful, and they'll be envious and proud of you at the same time. Everyone will want to know you. But guess what? They only want to know you because they want to use you. Yeah, that's the rub. And then, if you ever tell them about your pain, no one's going to really feel sorry for you. No. Not that you want people to feel sorry for you, because I hate pity, but you would like to be understood. And the only way to be understood is for people to listen to you, like the real you. And that's why I always talk to God. Because God's the only source. That's it. My entire life. Who didn't judge me and didn't leave. Was always there, good and bad. And I think like the most amazing parts of relationships I had with other people on this planet, like I was talking about with my uncle, that was the God in him. And that was the God in me having that relationship. That's what I think. But yeah. So I know for a fact that all that would happen if I were to suddenly get money would be my bills would be paid. I wouldn't feel like a total loser, because since my brain injury, things have been a nightmare financially. I'm not even going to get into disability and Social Security in this country, because that would be a whole other video. It's been hell with no light at the end of the tunnel. Trump's not helping that. Okay, I guess it's the end of this video is me in the gift shop. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm like, let's say I'm 18 years old. I'm thinking, do I ever want to go back to that table? What if I just went to the airport and left, like, and never saw anybody I know again? Like, would it be happier? But I wouldn't do that, of course, because I'm a living person. I love my family, even if they made choices that almost ruined my life. I'm sure I've done that to my own children. That's the big circle of life. And I'm dealing with some things now that absolutely nobody knows about. And I guess that's always going to be the challenge of life. I just always thought eventually there'd be like something to leave the gift shop for that would be safe, and it wouldn't be joy cinched with fire. I always thought one day I'm going to have a table to go to that won't have pain at it too. But I'm still looking for that table. And this is the end. Bye.